He told her she'd disgusted him since the day they met, on their anniversary. She just smiled and passed the mashed potatoes. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Before we dive in, I need to ask you something. Have you ever smiled through heartbreak because crying felt too familiar? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever stayed just to see if love could come back from the dead, hit subscribe. You'll want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday night in Columbus, Ohio, the kind where the air smelled like rain that never came. Lena stood at the kitchen counter, lighting a single candle she'd found in the back of a drawer. It was vanilla-scented, half-melted, and leaning to one side, like it had been waiting for a reason to exist again. She checked the roast in the oven. Perfect. She'd ironed the tablecloth, chilled the wine, and even worn the blue dress Ethan once said made her eyes look softer. 10 years of marriage. 10 quiet, careful years. The clock above the microwave read 6:42 p.m. He was late. Outside, the sound of tires crunching the driveway made her straighten her posture. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and practiced her smile. Small, polite, safe. The front door opened. Ethan's footsteps were heavy. He didn't say hello, just tossed his keys on the counter and loosened his tie. He smelled faintly of aftershave and exhaustion. "Traffic?" she asked. "Work," he said. A single word, flat as a closed door. They ate in silence for a while. The sound of the fork against her plate felt louder than it should have. The roast tasted like she'd overthought it. Then, out of nowhere, he sighed and said, "You've disgusted me since day one." The words didn't hit her all at once. They floated through the air like dust, landing slow and deliberate. She looked at him, still holding her fork. "What?" Ethan didn't look up. "I don't know. Maybe it's the way you talk. The way you try too hard to make everything perfect. I can't stand it anymore." Her throat went dry. The candle flickered between them, the flame bending with every word he spoke. He took a sip of wine. "I've been pretending for years. Thought maybe I'd get used to it. But I don't. I just can't." Lena nodded once, then again, and then she smiled. It wasn't forced, it was almost peaceful. "Okay," she said softly. He frowned. "That's it? You're not gonna cry?" She set her fork down carefully, the silver clinking against the plate. "Would it change anything if I did?" He didn't answer. The silence between them grew heavy. The air conditioner kicked on, humming like a heartbeat that wasn't sure it should keep going. Lena leaned back in her chair, studying him, the man she'd memorized. The same tie he'd worn to her father's funeral. The same hands that once tucked her hair behind her ear before a job interview. Now those hands rested on the table, still indifferent. "You've thought about this a while, haven't you?" she said. He looked up then, and for a moment she saw something flicker, guilt maybe, or regret. It was gone before she could name it. "I have," he said simply. She nodded again, slow. Then, "Happy anniversary." And with that, she stood, blew out the candle, and carried her plate to the sink. Outside, the sky had turned the color of bruised peaches. Streetlights blinked on, one by one, across the cul-de-sac. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Lena walked out onto the porch and wrapped her arms around herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister, June. "How's dinner? You two doing anything special?" She stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. It was memorable. Then she turned the phone face down on the railing. Inside, Ethan was still at the table, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. The sound of a fork tapping a plate echoed faintly through the screen door. She thought about all the years she'd spent trying to earn love, by cooking, by listening, by forgiving. How many times had she mistaken endurance for affection? The porch light flickered. A mosquito buzzed near her ear. She swatted it away. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She felt still. The next morning, Ethan left early. The front door closed quietly, like even the house didn't want to wake. Lena sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold. The candle from last night still sat on the counter. A thin curl of wax pooled beside it. She picked it up, ran her thumb along the hardened edge, and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't to him. It wasn't even to herself. It was to the moment, the clarity. Outside, the neighborhood stirred awake. The sound of sprinklers. The smell of toasted bagels from somewhere next door. Life moved forward, uncaring and unstoppable. Lena opened her laptop. She hesitated, then typed short-term rentals near Lake Erie. She didn't know why, just that she needed to breathe somewhere else for a while. Her reflection in the screen looked unfamiliar, calmer, stronger, almost like someone new was sitting there. The phone buzzed again. "Ethan. Forgot my wallet. Be home in 10. She looked at the message, then at the wallet sitting on the counter beside the candle. She thought about moving it. She didn't. Instead, she walked to the window and watched as the clouds began to break, thin strips of sunlight cutting across the lawn. She smiled again. The same soft smile from last night, but this time, it reached her eyes. And as the sound of his car pulled into the driveway, she whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." But neither of them knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the sky over Columbus was pale gray, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or shine. Lena stood at the sink, rinsing out her coffee cup, staring at the yard through the window. The grass was still wet from sprinklers. Ethan's car wasn't in the driveway anymore. The house felt different, quieter, not peaceful, just empty. She wrapped her hands around the counter, breathing slowly. It was strange how quickly love could turn into habit. How silence could feel like safety when you'd been walking on eggshells for years. On the kitchen counter, Ethan's wallet still sat beside the candle. He hadn't noticed it last night or this morning. That small fact told her everything. Her phone buzzed again. A new message from her sister, June. "Lena, you okay? You didn't sound like yourself last night." Lena typed back, "I'm fine, just tired. I'll call later." She hit send, then closed her eyes. Her throat tightened. The truth was, she didn't even know how to start that kind of conversation. She'd always been the one who made excuses, who defended Ethan when people said he seemed cold. Now she was out of excuses. Around noon, she got in her car and drove into town. The roads were lined with small diners, dry cleaners, and chain stores. The radio played a soft country song about heartbreak and summer rain. She pulled into a Target parking lot, parked under the shade of a maple tree, and sat for a minute. It was funny. Target had always been her safe place. Something about the smell of popcorn and laundry detergent made life feel manageable. But today, the aisles felt different. Too bright, too clean. She picked up a basket, not sure why she was even there. A new candle, toothpaste, a small notebook. Things you buy when you're trying to feel normal. As she walked past the home decor aisle, she froze. Ethan. He was standing near the electronics section, talking to a woman. Tall, with dark hair and red lipstick. She was laughing loud and easy, the kind of laugh Lena hadn't made in years. Her stomach twisted. She stepped back behind a display shelf, heart thudding in her chest. She shouldn't care. She told herself that over and over. But she did. The woman reached out and touched Ethan's arm. He didn't pull away. Lena felt her breath catch. Not because he was with someone, but because he looked happy. Effortlessly, almost carelessly happy. She clutched the handle of her basket tighter. Then, quietly, she turned and walked toward the exit. Outside, the air hit her like a wave, hot and heavy. She made it to her car before the tears started. She didn't sob. It wasn't that kind of cry. It was quiet, almost graceful, like her body was simply letting go. She wiped her eyes, started the car, and whispered, "Okay." Just that. One word. Like a promise. That night, Ethan came home late again. Lena was sitting at the dining table, sorting through old mail. Bills, flyers, an invitation to a neighborhood barbecue. "Did you forget something this morning?" she asked without looking up. He stopped in the doorway, confused. "What?" She pointed to the counter. His wallet sat exactly where he'd left it. "Oh," he said, walking over to grab it. "Yeah, I was running late." She nodded. "You were at Target today?" He froze for a second. "Yeah, picked up a few things for work." "Why?" She kept her tone light. "Nothing. Just thought I saw you there." He glanced at her. "You following me now?" Lena smiled faintly. "No, just shopping." He didn't respond. He went upstairs, and the sound of his footsteps faded. Lena sat there, hands trembling, but she didn't cry this time. Something had shifted inside her, small but real. The next morning, she drove to June's house, about 30 minutes outside the city. June lived in a cozy home near a big cornfield, the kind where every room smelled faintly of cinnamon. June opened the door in sweatpants, holding a coffee mug. "Lena, what's going on?" Lena tried to smile, but her voice cracked. "I just needed to get out for a while." "Did something happen?" Lena hesitated. "Yeah, everything." They sat at the kitchen table. Lena told her everything. Ethan's words, the dinner, the smile, even seeing him at Target. June listened without interrupting, her face a mix of anger and heartbreak. When Lena finished, June reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't deserve that. You never did." Lena nodded, eyes wet. "I know, but knowing doesn't make it easier." June squeezed her hand. "You can stay here as long as you need." Lena's breath hitched. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. Later that afternoon, as Lena sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, she noticed how quiet it was out there. Just wind rustling the corn, a few birds calling from the fence line. She thought about her life in the city, the constant noise, the empty house. And she thought about Ethan's face when she smiled at him last night. It wasn't peace she'd seen in his eyes. It was confusion. That smile had broken something he didn't understand. It made him realize she didn't need his approval anymore. She set her tea down and whispered, "You don't get to break me twice." 2 days later, Ethan showed up at June's house. His car pulled into the gravel driveway just as the sun was setting. Lena was in the kitchen folding laundry. June peeked through the window. "He's here," she said quietly. Lena didn't move. "Let him knock." He did. 3 hard knocks on the front door. June opened it halfway. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I need to talk to her," he said, his tone sharp but uncertain. June crossed her arms. "About what?" He hesitated. "Just tell her I'm here." June looked over her shoulder. Lena gave a small nod. "It's okay." Ethan stepped inside, glancing around like the house made him uncomfortable. "Lena," he started. "We need to talk." She stayed seated, folding another towel. "About what?" "You were pretty clear the other night." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean it like that." She looked up. "Then how did you mean it?" He exhaled, frustrated. "You twist everything I say." Lena's voice stayed calm. "I repeated your words, Ethan. That's all." He stared at her for a long moment. "You're not even mad?" "No," she met his eyes. "I'm just done pretending." Something in him faltered. He looked around, lost. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Lena folded the last towel and stood. "Good. Maybe it's time you find out." The silence that followed was sharp, heavy. The sound of a lawnmower somewhere down the road filled the space between them. Ethan stepped back. "You really think you can just walk away?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her calm said everything. He shook his head and left without another word. When the door closed, Lena let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. June came over and wrapped her in a hug. "He's scared," June whispered. "I know," Lena said. "So am I." But this time, fear didn't mean weakness. It meant freedom. But fear has a way of finding its voice, and Lena's was about to be heard. The next few days passed like fog. Lena stayed at June's house, helping with chores, pretending things were normal. She watered the garden, folded laundry, and sat on the porch every morning with a mug of coffee. But her mind kept drifting back to the same thought. 10 years of pretending. She told herself she was fine. She even smiled when June cracked jokes, or when the neighbor's golden retriever wandered into the yard and dropped a tennis ball at her feet. But late at night, when the house was quiet, she caught herself replaying Ethan's words. "You've disgusted me since day one." They echoed in her chest, not because she believed them, but because she'd lived like they were true. One afternoon, June found her sitting on the back porch steps, staring at nothing. "You ever going to tell Mom?" June asked gently. Lena shook her head. "Not yet. She'll want to fix it." "She'll want to protect you," June corrected. Lena smiled weakly. "I don't need protecting. I just need to remember who I was before him." June leaned against the porch railing. "Who was that?" Lena's eyes softened. "Someone who laughed without checking if it was too loud." June smiled sadly. "She's still in there." Lena wanted to believe that. That weekend, she drove back into Columbus to pick up a few things from the house. Ethan was supposed to be at work. The driveway was empty when she pulled in. Inside, everything looked the same, but it felt different. The air was heavy, like the walls knew too much. She went straight to the bedroom closet. Her suitcase was still under the bed where she'd left it. She filled it slowly. Clothes, a few books, her favorite coffee mug. When she reached the nightstand, she found an old photo tucked in the drawer. Her and Ethan at the county fair, years ago. She was holding cotton candy, laughing. He was looking at her, smiling in a way he hadn't in a long time. She stared at it for a moment, then slid it into her bag. Not because she wanted to keep it, but because she needed to let it go somewhere else. The front door opened behind her. Her stomach dropped. "Lena," Ethan's voice. She froze, then turned slowly. He stood there, keys in hand, looking surprised. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Getting my things," she said simply. He stepped further inside. "You could have told me. I didn't think you'd care." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You know that's not fair." She looked at him, calm but firm. "Fairness hasn't really been our thing, Ethan." He stared at her suitcase. "So that's it." She nodded. "That's it." He took a step closer. "You think you're just gonna walk away from 10 years? She didn't flinch. "I already did." He let out a dry laugh. "You're running away because I said something in anger." "No," she said softly. "I'm leaving because you meant it." He opened his mouth to argue but stopped. His jaw tightened. "Do you even remember why we got married?" she asked. "Of course I do." "Then remind me." He blinked, caught off guard. "What kind of question is that?" She waited. He didn't answer. Finally, she said, "You can't even say it. That's the problem." He turned away, pacing. "You're twisting everything again. You always do this." Lena's voice stayed steady. "You know what I used to do, Ethan? I used to blame myself every time you got cold. I thought if I tried harder, you'd love me more. I thought if I smiled, you'd see me." He stopped pacing. She met his eyes. "But you never saw me. You just needed someone to stand still while you figured yourself out." He swallowed hard. "You're being dramatic." "Maybe," she said, "but I'm finally being honest." The room fell silent. Outside, a car horn echoed faintly from the street. Somewhere in the distance, a lawn mower started up. Ethan looked at her again, softer now. "So that's really it?" Lena zipped the suitcase. "Yeah, I think it has been for a while." She walked past him, slow and calm. Her suitcase wheels bumped softly against the hardwood floor. At the doorway, she paused. "You don't have to hate me anymore, Ethan. I'm done making that easy for you." Then she stepped outside. The sun was bright, the air thick with early summer heat. She loaded her suitcase into the trunk, climbed into the driver's seat, and sat there for a moment. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. Through the windshield, she could see the house. The same porch where they'd shared takeout nights, arguments, quiet mornings. She'd thought she'd feel empty leaving it. But instead, she felt light. When she pulled out of the driveway, she didn't look back. She drove through familiar streets, past the grocery store they used to shop at, the little diner they'd gone to on Sundays, the park where they'd once talked about baby names. Every corner held a memory, and each one felt a little less sharp. She stopped at a gas station just outside the city, the kind with flickering lights and a dusty convenience store that smelled like coffee and motor oil. She grabbed a soda and a bag of pretzels, then stepped outside. The sunset stretched wide across the sky, painting everything gold and orange. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel afraid of what came next. Later that night, she sat on June's porch again, listening to cicadas hum in the trees. June handed her a blanket and said, "So, what now?" Lena smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe I'll rent a place near the lake for a bit. I just need quiet." June nodded. "You'll find it." They sat in silence for a while, watching fireflies blink across the yard. Then June said softly, "You think he'll call?" Lena took a slow breath. "Maybe, but I'm not waiting anymore." Inside the house, her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't check it, because sometimes the loudest form of healing is silence. Pride is a liar, and theirs was about to cost them everything. It had been 3 weeks since Lena left. June's house had become her quiet refuge. Coffee in the mornings, long walks in the evenings, and small talk with neighbors who waved from their porches. Life was slower there, softer. Still, every night when she lay in bed, a voice in her head whispered Ethan's name, like an old song she couldn't turn off. She didn't miss him. She missed the version of herself who had once believed in them. One morning, June burst into the kitchen holding her phone. "Hey," she said. "Mom just called. She's in the hospital." Lena's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. What? What happened?" "Minor heart scare. They said she's okay, but she needs someone to help for a few days." "I'll go," Lena said immediately. June hesitated. "Ethan already offered. He's been checking in on her the past week." Lena blinked. "Ethan's been helping Mom?" "Yeah," June said. "She didn't want to tell you. Didn't want to make things awkward." Lena's stomach tightened. Of course he would. June gave her a soft look. "You sure you want to go?" Lena nodded. "She's my mother. Awkward or not, I'm going." That afternoon, Lena drove across town to her mother's small ranch-style house just outside Dayton, Ohio. The yard was trimmed neatly, the front porch still lined with her mother's potted plants. When Lena stepped inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and chicken soup. Her mother was sitting in her recliner, a blanket draped across her lap. "Sweetheart," she said, smiling faintly. "You didn't have to come." "I did," Lena said, kneeling beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Better," her mother said. "Just tired. Doctor says I need to take it easy." Ethan's voice came from the kitchen. "She's been doing too much again." Lena's chest tightened. She turned. He was standing by the counter, sleeves rolled up, washing dishes like he belonged there. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." The air between them was thick, too polite, too careful. Her mother, sensing the tension, smiled faintly. "I guess the two of you can take turns helping me this week. Lord knows I could use it." Lena forced a smile. "Of course." For the first 2 days, they stayed out of each other's way. Lena cooked breakfast. Ethan ran errands. They spoke only when necessary, short, polite exchanges about grocery lists and medication schedules. But small moments kept catching her off guard. The way he held the door open for her without thinking. The way his voice softened when talking to her mother. And once, when he reached across the counter to grab a glass, his hand brushed hers. Just a second, but it made her heart stumble. She hated that it did. On the third night, a storm rolled in. The power went out around 9 p.m., the house sinking into a soft, uneasy dark. Lena was lighting candles in the kitchen when Ethan walked in holding a flashlight. "Breaker's down," he said. "I'll check it." She nodded, watching him disappear into the hallway. Rain pounded against the windows. A few minutes later, she heard him call out, "It's not flipping back on." She joined him near the laundry room. "We'll just wait it out." When she turned, the flashlight caught her face for a second, highlighting her eyes, the curve of her jaw. Ethan looked at her longer than he should have. "What?" she asked quietly. "Nothing," he said, lowering the light. "You look Different. Lena's chest tightened. Different how? Stronger, he said simply. She looked away. I had to be. They stood there for a moment, the sound of rain filling the space between them. Later, they sat in the living room with her mother asleep in the next room. Candles flickered on the coffee table. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've been thinking about what I said that night. Lena didn't answer. He continued. I was angry. At myself. At everything. And I took it out on you. You meant it, she said softly. You don't say something like that if you don't mean it somewhere deep down. He shook his head. I meant it in the moment. But not the way it sounded. She gave a small, bitter laugh. That's the thing, Ethan. I spent years trying to hear what you meant instead of what you said. He looked at her, quiet. I don't know how to fix this. You can't, she said. And that's okay. Her voice was gentle, not cruel. Just tired. Lightning flashed through the window. For a moment, the room was all white light and shadow. When it faded, Lena saw the look on his face. Something between regret and realization. Lena, he said, his voice low. I never stopped caring. She shook her head. You stopped respecting. That's worse. He swallowed hard. I know. The clock ticked softly in the corner. The storm outside began to ease. She stood up. Good night, Ethan. He nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. Good night. The next morning, the power was back. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor. Her mother was humming softly while making toast. Your husband fixed the breaker last night, she said. He's not my husband, Lena said gently. Her mother smiled sadly. Old habits. Lena poured herself coffee. Yeah, old habits. Ethan walked in a moment later, hair still damp from a shower. I'll head out for groceries. Anything you need? Lena shook her head. No, we're good. Their eyes met briefly, calm, understanding, unfinished. That afternoon, Lena sat on the porch while the air buzzed with the hum of cicadas. Ethan's car pulled up, trunk filled with groceries. He carried the bags to the porch steps, paused and said quietly, I'm leaving town next week. Transfer for work. Chicago. Lena blinked. When? Monday. She nodded slowly. That's soon. Yeah. He hesitated. I didn't want to go without saying goodbye. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not out of politeness, but out of peace. Goodbye, Ethan. He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled too. Take care of yourself, Lena. I finally am. He nodded, stepped off the porch, and walked to his car. As he drove away, Lena exhaled, the sound soft but steady. The storm had passed, inside and out. She leaned back in the porch chair, watching the clouds clear. And somewhere deep inside, something she'd buried for years began to rise. Not love, not anger, but quiet freedom. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Tell me what happened. I want to hear your story. She saw it then, the fracture in his armor, and it terrified her. The day after Ethan left, the house felt too quiet. Lena cleaned the kitchen twice, even though it was already spotless. She watered her mother's plants, folded laundry, and still couldn't shake the stillness that filled the rooms. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was space, strange, unfamiliar space. Her mother noticed it too. You keep looking out that window, she said from her recliner. Expecting someone? Lena smiled faintly. Just the mailman. Her mother chuckled. You always did hate endings. Lena turned from the window. This doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like something I haven't named yet. Her mother nodded, eyes kind. Sometimes peace feels like loneliness at first. Later that week, June drove over with takeout and a stack of mail from Lena's old house. I stopped by to grab the rest of your things, June said, setting the box on the table. Lena looked through it. Old bills, a few photos, and a small envelope with Ethan's handwriting. Her chest tightened. June saw her face. You gonna open it? Lena shook her head. Not yet. She set it aside, next to her coffee cup. They ate in silence for a while. Then June said, he looked rough, by the way. Lena raised an eyebrow. You saw him? At the grocery store. He was in the aisle staring at a can of soup like it had answers. Lena laughed softly, then grew quiet. He always hated grocery shopping. Yeah, June said. But he was there alone. Something in that sentence landed heavy. Not painful, just real. That night, Lena finally opened the envelope. Inside was a short note, no apology, no grand speech. Just a few lines written in his uneven handwriting. Lena, I don't know how to make sense of what I said. You didn't deserve it. You never did. You were the best thing I had, and I didn't know how to hold it. She read it twice, then set it down. The old Lena would have called him, desperate to find meaning. The new Lena folded the letter and tucked it into the drawer beside her bed. Kept, but not worshipped. Days turned into weeks. Her mother got stronger, started walking the block again with her cane. Lena helped neighbors with yard work, baked pies for the church picnic, and filled her days with small, quiet routines. But one morning, she got a call that froze her mid-sentence. Lena, June's voice was shaky. You need to sit down. Lena's heart started pounding. What's wrong? It's Ethan, June said softly. He was in an accident. A semi ran a red light outside Chicago. He's alive, but it's bad. Lena's knees gave out, and she sank into the chair. Is he conscious? They said he's stable. But they need someone listed as next of kin for the surgery paperwork. You're still on the forms. By afternoon, Lena was on the interstate, driving toward Chicago, the highway lined with endless fields and billboards. The radio played quietly, but she wasn't listening. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Every mile brought back memories. Road trips, arguments, laughter, the small life they'd built and broken. When she reached the hospital, the smell of disinfectant and coffee hit her immediately. A nurse guided her to the waiting area. He's in surgery, the nurse said gently. You can wait here. Lena nodded, barely hearing her. She sat down, hands trembling. She didn't know what she felt. Fear, anger, compassion, maybe all of it, maybe none of it. Hours passed. The waiting room lights buzzed softly above her. She watched families come and go. Husbands pacing, mothers praying, kids sleeping on plastic chairs. When the doctor finally approached, Lena stood. He made it through, he said. Multiple fractures, but he'll recover. He asked for you. Her throat tightened. He asked for me? The doctor nodded. You can see him now, just for a few minutes. The room was dim, machines humming quietly. Ethan looked pale, one arm in a sling, bandages around his forehead. His eyes opened when she stepped closer. Hey, he whispered. Hey, she said softly. You came. Of course I did. He tried to smile, winced. You shouldn't have had to. Lena pulled the chair closer to his bed. It's not about have to. They sat in silence for a moment. The sound of rain against the window filled the space. He spoke again. When the truck hit, all I could think about was that night. What I said. I heard my own voice in my head over and over. Lena swallowed hard. Ethan, I was cruel because I hated myself, he said quietly. You were kind, and it scared me. I didn't know how to meet you there. Tears stung her eyes. You can't change what's done. I know, he said. But I wanted to tell you anyway. She nodded slowly. Thank you. Later, she stepped out into the hallway. The hospital vending machine hummed beside her. She pressed her palms against the cool tile wall, breathing deeply. It was too much, the memories, the guilt, the strange tenderness of it all. A nurse passed by, asked if she was okay. Lena managed a small smile. Yeah, just catching up to everything. That night, she sat in her car outside the hospital. The parking lot lights cast long shadows on the pavement. Her phone buzzed. A text from June. How is he? Lena typed back. Alive. That's enough. She stared at the phone for a long time before starting the car. The drive back to her motel was quiet. The world outside blurred into streaks of light and rain. Over the next week, she visited daily. Not because she wanted him back, but because compassion was her language. They talked about small things: weather, the hospital food, her mother's recovery. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. On the fourth day, Ethan looked at her and said, "You know, I thought you'd hate me forever." Lena smiled softly. "Hate's too heavy. I carried enough of that." He looked down, tears forming in his eyes. "You're too good." She shook her head. "No. I just stopped letting pain make me small." He exhaled, the sound shaky. "I wish I'd known how to love you right." "You did," she said. "Just too late." He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. Lena reached out, took his hand gently. "Rest, Ethan. The hard part's over." And for the first time, she believed her own words. That night, back at the motel, Lena opened the window and let the city air in. The sound of sirens and distant traffic filled the room. She looked out at the lights, thousands of stories unfolding, hundreds of hearts breaking and healing at once. It made her feel small and infinite all at once. She whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Maybe to the universe. Maybe to herself. The truth has a way of finding light, even when you've buried it in the dark. The weeks that followed felt strangely suspended, as if time itself was waiting to see what Lena would do next. Ethan was discharged from the hospital a month later. He moved into a small rental outside Columbus, Ohio, closer to physical therapy. Lena helped arrange the basics: a recliner, some groceries, his prescriptions. But she didn't stay. Her mother was better now, walking unassisted, even baking again. "You look lighter," she told Lena one morning, sliding a plate of banana bread across the table. "I feel clearer," Lena said. "But it's complicated." Her mom smiled knowingly. "Healing always is." A few days later, Ethan called. His voice was tired but soft. "I wanted to say thank you," he began, "for coming to the hospital, for not hating me." Lena leaned against her porch railing, watching kids ride bikes down the street. "You don't have to thank me." He hesitated. "Can we talk? In person?" Something in her chest pulled tight. "Ethan, I don't know if—" "It's not to ask for anything," he said quickly. "I just want to see you. One time. Properly." After a long silence, Lena said, "Okay, one time." They met at Maple Diner, a small roadside place they used to go to on Sunday mornings. The smell of coffee and frying bacon hung heavy in the air. Country music played low from an old jukebox. Ethan was already there, sitting in a booth near the window. He looked older, thinner, slower, but softer somehow. When she sat down, he smiled faintly. "You look good." "So do you," she said, though his bandaged hand made her heart ache. A waitress came by, poured them both coffee. "I used to hate this place," Ethan said after a while. "Said it smelled like burnt toast and regret." Lena laughed quietly. "You did say that." He took a sip of coffee, eyes fixed on the table. "Funny thing is, I miss it now. Miss the little things I took for granted." She waited. She knew there was more. "I thought I needed to feel powerful," he said finally. "That was my sickness. The more you loved me, the weaker I felt. So I pushed you away to feel big again." Lena looked at him gently. "You weren't weak, Ethan. You were scared." His eyes lifted, filled with tears. "And I ruined everything because of it." For a long time they sat without speaking. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation filled the silence. Finally, Lena said, "You didn't ruin everything. You just changed it. And so did I." He looked at her. "Do you think we could ever?" She shook her head softly. "No, Ethan. Not that way." He swallowed, nodding slowly. "I figured." Lena reached across the table, rested her hand over his. "But you'll still matter to me. Always." He looked down at their hands. "That's almost worse," he whispered. She smiled sadly. "It's better, because it's honest." Outside, the sky had gone gray. Rain began to tap gently against the diner windows. They stood by her car, unsure what to say next. Ethan shoved his hands in his jacket pockets. "You were the only thing that ever made sense, you know?" Lena looked at him, the drizzle clinging to her hair. "Then learn from that," Don't waste it this time. He nodded. You make it sound easy. It isn't, she said softly. But it's worth it. He looked at her for a long moment, as if memorizing the curve of her smile, the calm in her eyes. Then he whispered, I'm sorry again. I know, she said. But now it's time for both of us to live. That night, back home, Lena stood in the living room staring at the framed photo from their wedding. Her fingers traced the edge of the glass before she took it down. She didn't smash it or cry. She simply placed it gently into a drawer. The sound of the drawer closing felt final, but also freeing. 2 weeks later, she returned to the community center where she once volunteered. The director, a cheerful woman named Carla, greeted her warmly. You came back, Carla said. Lena smiled. I missed it here. They spent the afternoon sorting food donations. A young mother came in carrying a toddler, nervous and embarrassed. Lena knelt down, offered the child a snack and a smile. It's okay, she said gently. You're not alone. As the woman's shoulders relaxed, Lena felt something shift inside her. A quiet certainty. This was where she belonged now. Not looking backward, but reaching forward. That evening, June stopped by for coffee. She noticed the empty spot on the wall where the wedding photo used to hang. Guess that chapter's done, June said softly. Lena nodded. It is. They sat in silence for a bit before June asked, You still think about him? Sometimes, Lena admitted. But it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just part of the story. June smiled. That's growth, babe. Lena laughed. Yeah, took me long enough. That night, Lena sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders. The air was cool, and the crickets hummed in the yard. She closed her eyes, remembering Ethan's face at the diner. Regretful, tired, but human. She didn't hate him. She didn't pity him. She simply released him. And in doing so, she finally released herself. A soft wind swept across the porch, carrying the smell of rain and cut grass. It felt like cleansing, like a quiet promise that pain doesn't get the last word. The next morning, Lena woke before sunrise. She brewed a cup of coffee, stepped outside, and watched the sky turn from gray to gold. Her phone buzzed, an unread message from Ethan. It was short. I'm leaving Ohio, going to stay with my brother out west. I just wanted to say, thank you for teaching me what love really is, even when I didn't deserve it. Lena smiled faintly, then deleted the message. Not out of anger, but peace. She whispered, Go find yourself. Then she poured her second cup and opened the window wide, letting in the cool morning air. She didn't realize she was crying until she felt a tear slide down her cheek. But this time it wasn't sadness. It was release. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of goodbye. Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight for them? Share your story below. I read every single one. Autumn came early that year. Leaves turned fast, burning orange along the streets of Columbus, Ohio. Mornings were cool enough for sweaters, and the air smelled like rain and pumpkin coffee. Lena found herself walking more. She'd stroll to the park near her mother's house, hands tucked in her pockets, breathing in the crisp air. Every now and then, she'd pass couples holding hands and feel a quiet ache. Small but not sharp anymore. Her world had changed shape. She wasn't waiting for anyone to fix it. She was simply living inside it. One morning, while helping at the community center, Carla waved her over. There's a woman asking for you, she said. Said she knows you from way back. Lena frowned. Who? A woman stepped out from behind the counter. Her name was Grace, Ethan's older sister. She looked older than Lena remembered, her expression soft but searching. I didn't mean to surprise you, Grace said. Can we talk? They walked outside, standing near the line of parked cars. The sky was gray, the air thick with the smell of damp leaves. Grace took a deep breath. Ethan's been staying with me, out in Colorado. He's different now. I think he finally faced himself. Lena crossed her arms gently. I'm glad to hear that. Grace hesitated. He asked me to tell you he's sober. Been in therapy. He said he doesn't expect anything. Just wanted you to know he's trying. Lena looked at her shoes, nodding slowly. That's good. Truly. Grace studied her face. He still loves you, you know? Lena smiled faintly. Maybe. But sometimes love isn't the point anymore. Grace nodded, understanding. He said you'd say that. They hugged goodbye. A quiet, short embrace between two women who'd both survived the same storm. That night, Lena sat on her porch, the glow from the streetlights stretching across the driveway. She could hear a football game on someone's TV 2 houses down. She thought about the word reckoning. It didn't mean punishment. It meant accounting, owning what was true. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she could do that without shame. A week later, she took her mother to a fall festival in Hilliard, a nearby town. Kids ran between hay bales, couples sipped cider under string lights, and a country band played soft music near a food truck. Her mom watched her quietly. You're glowing, you know that? Lena laughed. It's probably the funnel cake grease. Her mom shook her head. No, it's peace. Lena smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I think I finally know what that feels like. Later, while packing up some boxes at home, she found an old journal she hadn't opened in years. Inside were pages filled with the voice of a younger her. Lonely, hopeful, afraid to admit she wanted more. She read one line and stopped. If he ever really saw me, maybe I'd finally exist. She stared at those words for a long time before closing the book. Then, without hesitation, she threw it away. She didn't need that version of herself anymore. The next morning, she woke early, unable to shake the thought of Grace's visit. Without overthinking, she made coffee, sat by the window, and wrote a letter. Ethan, I'm glad you're healing. I truly am. You taught me things I didn't want to learn, about pain, about patience, about what it means to lose yourself for love. But I also learned how to find myself again. I forgive you, and I forgive the part of me that stayed too long. Be well. Lena. She didn't mail it. She didn't need to. She placed it in the drawer beside her bed, the same drawer where his old apologies still rested. Two truths side by side, balanced at last. Lena drove out to the edge of town that afternoon, where the highway stretched flat and endless beneath the open sky. She parked at a rest stop overlooking a cornfield gone pale for the season. The wind hummed low through the stalks, carrying that dry, earthy scent of fall. She stood there, just breathing. The sound of cars passing in the distance, the crunch of gravel beneath her boots, the steady rhythm of her own heart. In that moment, she felt everything she had survived. Every insult, every silence, every small moment where she had chosen to stay. But now, staying meant something else. It meant staying with herself. Back home, the phone rang that evening. It was a Colorado number. Lena let it go to voicemail. Later, she listened. Ethan's voice came through, quiet, unsure. I got your letter. Grace showed me. I didn't expect it, but I'm grateful. You were right about everything. I'm learning how to be alone without being empty. I just wanted you to know. I hope you're happy. You deserve that. She deleted the message but whispered, thank you. That night, she lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for mourning, just as a marker. Her mother came in, curious. What's that for? Lena smiled. Closure. Her mother nodded. That's a good reason. They ate dinner together, laughing about old memories, the candle flickering between them like a quiet promise that life still had more to give. Before bed, Lena stood by her window. The night was cold and still. In the distance, she could hear a train whistle, long and lonely. But instead of sadness, she felt hope, the kind that's soft and steady, like the hum of something just beginning. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway. The rain had started, quiet at first, a soft tap against the window. Sophie sat in her car, staring out at the street in front of their house. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, the cold of the leather seeping into her fingers. It was late, nearly midnight. The world outside felt as if it had stopped moving, everything still and quiet. She had driven away. Not far, just down the road, parked in the empty lot behind the diner. But leaving, even for an hour, had given her a moment of clarity. The sound of the rain, the soft hum of her car's engine, everything was different in this space. It was quiet. It was hers. David had apologized, but words had never been enough. For so long, that was all they had, words. He'd said he was sorry. He'd said she was right. But Sophie had learned that sometimes sorry wasn't enough. Sometimes it was just about being brave enough to let go of what you thought you wanted for something that was truly yours. She thought about the years they'd spent together. The good moments, those first days when love felt easy. The way they had once made each other laugh, late into the night, talking about nothing. The way he had held her when the world outside felt too loud. She missed that, missed him in a way she couldn't explain. But as much as she missed the past, she knew now that the past wasn't coming back. Not the way it was. She turned the key, the engine clicking off. Her eyes still lingered on the house, just visible in the distance. The porch light was on. David stood on the front step, his hands in his pockets, looking at the rain like he was trying to understand it. She knew he was waiting for her, but she also knew he wasn't the same man he had been when they first met. And neither was she. Sophie took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the house. David looked up as she stepped onto the porch. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her as she came closer. There was a nervousness in his eyes, the kind you get when you've made a mistake and hope the person you hurt will still be there. "Do you want to talk?" he asked softly, his voice uncertain. Sophie paused at the door, her hand on the knob. She could feel the weight of everything in that moment. The hurt, the time lost, the love that had flickered out but never quite gone cold. "I think we've talked enough," she said, her voice steady. There was no anger in it, no bitterness, just clarity. "I think I've been listening for too long and not enough living." David nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. He wasn't ready to admit everything, not yet. But Sophie wasn't going to wait for him anymore. She had spent too many years doing that. She stepped inside, slowly but firmly. The house was familiar. The smell of their old kitchen, the creak of the floorboards under her feet. It was still home, even if it wasn't the home she had imagined. And yet, standing there, something shifted. The house had become a place of memories. Not bad memories, but memories that needed to be packed away. "I don't want to keep pretending," Sophie said, her voice softer now but still full of purpose. "We've tried, David. But trying isn't enough anymore." He didn't say anything, just stood there, looking like he was finally seeing her for the first time in a long while. He could hear it in her words, the finality in her tone. He could feel the shift in the air. "I don't hate you," Sophie continued. "But I need to stop pretending that I can save something that's already broken." There was a long silence. Then David spoke, his voice cracking just a little. "I don't want you to leave. I've been so messed up. I didn't know how to fix things. I was scared." "I know," Sophie whispered, walking toward him. She reached for his hand, but instead of clinging, she just let it rest there. No pressure, no expectations. But sometimes, the hardest thing is knowing when it's time to let go. Her fingers traced the back of his hand, gentle. He flinched at first, but then, after a few seconds, his hand relaxed in hers. He didn't pull away. "I don't know how to let go of you," he murmured. Sophie smiled softly, shaking her head. "You don't have to let go of me. You just have to let go of the idea of who we were, and allow yourself to see who we could still be. Just not together." David looked down at their hands, the silence stretching between them like a thread too thin to hold on to. Sophie didn't want to leave him like this, broken, unsure. But she had already started healing, and part of that healing meant she had to choose herself. "I'm sorry," David whispered again, and this time, Sophie heard it for what it was. Not an apology for the past, but a recognition that he had failed to see her, to appreciate her in the way she deserved. "I know you are," she said, and for the first time in a long while she felt lighter. David let out a quiet breath, the weight of it all hanging in the air between them. Sophie pulled her hand back, but only for a moment. She turned toward the door. "You'll be okay," she said. Not a question, just a statement. Yeah, David answered softly. I think I will be. Sophie stepped out onto the porch again, the rain still falling gently around her. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of being alone. She wasn't afraid of the unknown. And as she walked away, the weight of everything that had been holding her back seemed to lift, just a little. She wasn't walking toward an answer or a resolution. She was just walking, finally free. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? Drop a heart in the comments if this story hit you. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.